And so we are recording, and we're live. As I said, we're live on Facebook on the Community Connections Facebook page. If that's a page that you're not on, it's a group that you need to request admission to. It's got over 1,000 members, and it's primarily geared towards the nonprofits in our community and sharing of information about things like upcoming volunteer opportunities and different types of services and needs. So please take an opportunity to join that page if you get a second time. And I'll put the link to the page in the chat when I get a moment. So I'd like to welcome everybody to our quarterly Greater Nashua Community Connections Forum. I wanted to express what this meeting is for, what it is and what it isn't, I think is important. What it is, it's a meeting that was created and designed in order for us to accomplish really two things. One is to share important information about relevant issues of our times, things that are going on in our community that we think a broad audience would benefit from knowing about. And the agenda changes every quarter. The focus could be on health. Generally, we follow the United Way framework of health, education, and financial stability, and rotate in topics under one or more of those categories. So today's theme is going to be environment and infrastructure and community development. Of course, very relevant topics in the world of health, as we think in particular of the social determinants of health. So we have a great lineup of speakers today. I'm going to let Liz introduce that in just a moment. Before she does that, I would like to thank our community partners who help us to put together the Community Connections Forum. This is a partnership collaboration with the United Way along with the Greater Nashua Regional Planning Commission. And I believe I saw Jay on the line, so thank you for your participation. The City of Nashua in particular, the VOAD, the Volunteer Organization for Emergency Response under Justin Cates. Also the Greater Nashua Public Health and Community Services Department, what all of us know as Public Health. And so Bobby Bagley and her team are great partners. The three regional chambers, the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce, and Kate and her team, the Greater Merrimack and Sohegan Valley Chamber of Commerce, with Wendy and her team, and the Hudson Chamber of Commerce, also a partner of ours. So thank you, Brenda and crew. Last but not least, we'd like to thank our partners at the hospital institutions, St. Joseph's Hospital and Southern New Hampshire Health, and the broader Solutions Health organization, which also encompasses the Elliott as well. So thank you to all of our partners to helping to plan this event and to sponsor it and to promote it. Liz, I would say, why don't we turn the agenda over to you to walk through what we're going to be doing the next hour and a half. And as I would say, I would just remind everybody, we are live, as I said, on Facebook, and we are also recording for posterity.
Great, thank you, Mike. So today we're going to have a couple of speakers, which we like to consider our conversation starters or our dialogue initiators, who are going to give us 10 minutes worth of perspective on the topic that their expertise is in, to help us think about some issues that are coming up, needs, opportunities, ways we can collaborate. And then after that, we'll open it up to everybody on the call to share their insights and opportunities around these topics so we can get some dialogue going. So let me just show you our lineup today. And just a heads up, a lot of people had a busy schedule. So they're coming on the call as soon as they can, but if we have to juggle around because they weren't able to join us, we'll do so. But first up is Dan Weeks, who is the owner and marketing director of Revision Energy. And then Amber Logue is the leader of the City of Nashua's master plan process called Imagine Nashua. She's going to talk to us. Jay Minkra is going to talk about infrastructure, in particular focus on transportation. And then Patty Crooker and Bobby Bagley from Greater Nashua Public Health are going to give us an update on vaccine distribution and rollout for the Greater Nashua area. So that's what we have on the agenda today. And if you're ready, Dan, we welcome you to get the conversation started.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the chance to gather with you. Thank you to Mike and the whole team at United Way for convening these conversations. I'm saying hello from snowy French Hill here on Shattuck Street. Great to see folks in the neighborhood, and very glad to be part of this great effort. Let me go ahead. I can't share my screen at the moment. Is that something you can enable? Yep. I thought a few slides would make it a little more fun. As was just mentioned, I'm Dan Weeks, and my day job is with Revision Energy. We're an employee-owned solar clean energy company, and I've had the honor of working with municipalities, especially City of Nashua, with our school district here, with a bunch of nonprofits and businesses and others looking to make the clean energy transition. Prior to Revision bidding for city projects through the RFP process, I served on and was the chair of Nashua's Energy and Environment Committee. And as some of you know, I'm a bit of a loudmouth when it comes to promoting environmental sustainability and other causes in the community. So yeah, really grateful.
Liz made you a co-host. If you'd like to share your screen, that would be fine.
Perfect. Let me get started with that now. Okay, so hopefully this all works right. Can you see this title screen, Clean Energy in Nashua? Great, sure. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll dive right in. I've got 10 minutes and wanted to just give a quick overview, some highlights of what has been happening in the city. I'm going to zoom in a bit more on what I have particular knowledge of, which is our path-breaking work on solar deployment in the community. But I do want to touch on some of the other awesome clean energy initiatives that are new and in some cases very old. The first picture you see there is our hydro dam right in downtown on the Nashua River, right by our favorite Mexican restaurant there, and margaritas. And that's one of two city-owned municipal hydro dams that we've had in operation for decades, which produce multiple megawatts of power. And if you added that up, would offset the bulk of our municipal electric load for the city per se. And I'll talk about some of the other projects as I go through. For just a quick background, Revision Energy, where I'm a co-owner and director of market development, we have a mission that gets us, my 275 co-owners and I, pretty excited each morning, which is to empower our community to overcome the environmental, economic, and social inequities caused by fossil fuels, so that our vision is that our kids and grandkids can enjoy New England's clean air, water, and land just like we do. And we're proud to be a certified B Corporation that is a triple bottom line company that puts people and planet before profit. I do want to, I try to begin any one of these conversations with just a little reminder of the challenges that we face. And we may hear more from others like Justin, who has done amazing work kind of analyzing the risks that our city faces from climate change and its many different manifestations. But just at a high level here in New Hampshire, we know that in the status quo today, where most of our energy comes from non-renewable sources, about 80% between fossil fuels and nuclear power, that we collectively, residents, nonprofits, businesses, towns and cities, export billions of dollars a year to bring in that non-renewable energy. We don't sit on coal mines and gas or oil mining opportunities. So that all gets imported. Those monies flow out of state. On the trajectory that we have been on, and this is starting to change in some positive ways, but our trajectory, if we continue to emit at the level we've been in the last several years, we would see temperatures rise on the low end by 6 degrees Fahrenheit this century by the time my kids, my 3 little kids, are in old age. But on the status quo scenario, it would actually rise by double that, 12 degrees Fahrenheit. And that would essentially eviscerate our skiing industry, maple sugaring in the state that's already shifted largely north to Canada because maple trees are stressed. Tourism more broadly would be severely affected. We're seeing sea level rise quite substantially with a lot of flooding in places like Hampton, even when there's no rain falling from the sky, just those king tides and things like that. And we're seeing public health impacts with estimates being over 100 Granite Staters dying prematurely because of the fine particulate matter, the carbon pollution that comes from the burning of fossil fuels at a public cost of over $1 billion. So that's a little bit of the challenge that we face here in New Hampshire. There are, of course, opportunities, but before moving to that transition as it's been modeled, there's appropriately a lot of attention being paid finally to issues of racial disparities. And I like to say that climate justice and racial justice are actually two sides of the same coin. And specifically, we've seen, this is research done in a peer-reviewed academic journal, a bit dated. This is, the study was put out in 2008, but the trends unfortunately seem to continue, and in some ways have gotten even worse in the COVID pandemic. But we see that if you're a white family, a white person like me, grew up in rural New Hampshire, regardless of your income, you are on average going to experience a lot less environmental pollution, especially toxic air pollution from the fine particulate matter that comes out of those tailpipes and smokestacks. And so regardless of income, we see communities of color, especially Black American communities, experiencing much higher rates of pollution, which causes early premature death and a higher disease burden. Nashua is the most diverse community in New Hampshire. We don't have any big polluters here, but we do have a lot of small pollution that does occur even from all of our cars that we drive around, commuting and so on. The challenge, and I'm not going to go into this in great detail, but there have been a lot of plans put together, in this case, folks out at Stanford University, called the Solutions Project, mapping how New Hampshire could actually get to a 100% clean energy future where none of our electricity and other energy was reliant on the burning of fossil fuels. And that would be a mix of mostly wind and solar with an important baseline of hydro like the city already collects. And most importantly, it would add a lot of jobs, at least 16,000 jobs based on recent estimates, and many billions of dollars in new investment to the state. I do like to point out that while we've historically relied on the non-renewable energy sources you see in the bottom right, the total reserves based on the best science we have of what's available underground is what you see down below. These are total reserves, which once depleted will take millions of years to replenish. Compared to, you see the little blue dot on the left within the big sun, is our global energy use. So you can imagine 16 terawatts, divide that into the various fossil fuel reserves there in the bottom right. But compare that to the renewable, that is the annual amount of energy we get from those renewable sources, wind, and then the biggest of all, of course, the sun, the biggest power plant of them all, 93 million miles away in the sky. And amazingly, the sun delivers enough energy to the surface of the earth every hour to meet human needs for an entire year if we were to harness it all, which of course we don't need to do. Moving on, New Hampshire's latitude is actually on the same latitude as Spain, which means we have a lot more of a solar resource than people tend to think, even though it does get rather cold here. And the cost of the technology has come way down, which is the reason why we're seeing solar. This is a sampling of the projects happening in Nashua, and I'll flip through some bigger images so you can just see a little bit more up close. But that's a reason why we're seeing the rate of adoption in this community with Revision, but other great companies as well, has been rising very rapidly. Statewide, New Hampshire is way behind our neighboring states. Still a bit under 1% of our electricity comes from the sun, compared to 18% in Massachusetts and 14% in Vermont, but that is changing. So I'll just flip through some fun images as I wrap up my time here. But this is, of course, the hydro dam, one of our two municipal dams, multiple megawatts of power, and then a sampling of solar arrays for Crossway Christian Church on Pine Street, where my family attends. The Nashua Soup Kitchen was one of the first to go solar back in 2017 through a nonprofit PPA. More recently, the Conway Ice Arena, one of the biggest arrays in town at 400 kilowatts. Worthen Industries has the biggest at about 1 megawatt. The Lake Street Fire Station, from a couple of different angles. Our transit garage over by Nashua South High School, you're not going to see it from the ground, but a lot of panels up there on the roof. And then a whole lot of homes, as you see around town, that are also powered by solar. Most recently, I didn't get to insert the images, but 2 of our public schools, Fairgrounds and Dr. Crisp, are solar powered, more than 100% solar powered. And 2 more are in the pipeline, Pennachuck and the new middle school. And we've also got some great EV charging downtown in the garage. And just finally, I'll wrap up here, but a lot of local jobs and a lot more to come, we do believe, as the city continues to be the leader that it has really emerged in New Hampshire in the deployment of clean energy. So I'm sure I've taken my time. Thanks so much. And happy to take questions at the end.
Hey, Dan, we did have one question that was put into the chat from Paul Bohr. Paul is actually the founding executive director of a local nonprofit that works with homeless individuals to get access to showers. So I don't think that has anything at all to do with this question, but he asks, do you have an ability to provide solar connectivity on mobile platforms?
So we have done, Revision has created a couple of disaster response units, which we shipped off to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and then it's gone on to the Bahamas and other locations each year during hurricane season. So these are essentially portable trailer units, which have battery storage, which have a lot of dozens of charging outlets on them as well, water purification. So that's maybe the best example that comes to mind. And then there's all sorts of small products. Of course, I've got a couple panels in my car that I carry around. So if we need to provide sound for a PA or something at a public event, that's easy to do as well.
Thank you, Dan. Liz, would you mind turning off the sharing and introducing our next guest? Oh, Liz, you're muted.
So next we have Amber Logue from Imagine Nashua.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me, Mike and Liz, to speak. I'm actually coming to you down the hill from Dan. I'm on Logue Street, so we're Ward 3 neighbors. And I am the chair of Imagine Nashua, which is our master plan committee, as well as the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee. And for all of you dog lovers, we'll have some exciting updates for you coming over the next couple of months. Today, I want to speak to you a little bit about Imagine Nashua, what it is, what we've already done, what we've heard, and where we are going. And I'm going to share my screen with you. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. And before I do that, I do just want to ask one question. How many of you know what a master plan is or were a part of it in the past? Just go ahead and raise your hands. Okay. How many have already been a part of some of the public meetings that we have had, or smaller group meetings like this? Okay, great. So we're going to jump right in then. Usually Julie shares this for me. She's pretty amazing. So bear with me as I pull it up here. Awesome. So as I said, quick agenda. Normally it takes about 30-ish minutes. So there will be some parts that I will maybe speak too fast or you'll have a question about. You can either put it in the chat, ask later, or also know that every single piece of information that we speak about today is also available on the website, which is imagine.nashuanh.gov. And we'll go over that again if you didn't have time to write it down. So where we are in the process, what we've heard, where we're going, and what is next. A master plan is a long range and general document tool that acts as a policy instrument first and then technical second. So it's an all-inclusive approach to guiding Nashua's future growth, collaborating with diverse group of stakeholders such as yourself, and really serving as a zoning and land use development considerations. It does also include and integrates a lot of these initiatives and comprehensive studies that we've already done, such as the Nashua Downtown Riverfront Development Plan, which you're all familiar with. So what will it encompass? It is a vision statement as well as the broad goals for each topic, and then actions, specific actions and recommendations. You'll see we have equity, resilience, and climate protection right up at the top. So these are our golden threads. These are the three main things that will be weaved into every single topic discussion that we have, every goal and every action. How do they lean back? So is this specific action equitable? Is it resilient? And is it also overseeing climate protection? Is that included? So we are in the process, this is about 10 days old, so we're just shifted a little bit more down the timeline, but we are analyzing the socioeconomic indicators, taking in all of the feedback and data that we've heard so far, in the process of still asking for more, which I'll ask of you in a little bit, and then moving into more specific topic discussions. So we do want to hear from you. Again, I'll go over this shortly, but depending upon how much time you have, anywhere from a minute to an hour helps. So if you, one thing specifically I want to ask each of you is, who is not at this table? Who have you not seen being included in this conversation that you think should be? And please let us know, either email us, reach out to us individually, leave a comment, whatever it may be. We want to know. And you know, I used the example the other day. I had no idea of I forgot what the group is called now. It's a certain like sport group. I had no idea that it was even a thing. So how would we know to invite them? So whoever is not at the table you think should be, please let us know. So here's what we've heard so far. We've had social engagement across miscellaneous social media posts, newsletters through some of you, thank you. General invites, the mayor's ward meetings, as well as meetings such as this one-to-one, whether it's the Plus Company, the Planning Board, the BITA Board, the Smart Start Coalition, and you'll see some of these adorable faces. These are kids from the Boys and Girls Club that told us a little bit about the future that they would want to live in. And I don't think it will be a surprise to any of you that one of the key concerns that we heard was affordable housing. So it is not just important to each of us, it's also important to Nashua's future. So our first survey that we had, I won't dive into this, you can see it again on the site, but these are some of the people that have joined in and gave us their consensus statements, their statements that they agreed with and didn't agree with. And you'll see for the most part, we were all really on the same point, right? We all had some agreement on what we wanted to see this future Nashua look like, specifically being improved access to green space and the riverfront. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, as well as quality and high paying jobs. We really need to focus on quality jobs that are within reach of most of our residents. Major themes that have evolved from the focus groups as well as the survey so far under land use and development is we have really incredible neighborhoods, and we're looking at how can we connect them better, just neighbor to neighbor within specific neighborhoods. Like I had no idea Dan lived right up the street and we live in the same neighborhood, right? So how do we better connect that, as well as how do we connect each neighborhood to one another? Housing is, rather than new development, how do we adapt, you know, reuse of unused or existing abandoned buildings or underused buildings? Mobility and transit, consideration for rail service, expand bus routes options, economic growth. We've heard a lot of need for entrepreneurial spaces that provide options for startups. Open spaces, we all want to access and improve and protect our riverfront areas, our parks, arts and culture, looking for year-round festivals and events. And so I think across all of these, one of those golden threads that we're seeing is people actually want to be better connected to one another. And so translating community outreach into goals, that's what we'll be moving forward in the next section. So here's where we're going. Hopefully, there we go, is how the vision fits into the planning framework. So we are taking, again, those three major core values of equity, resilience, and climate protection, and pulling that through all of the plan elements, which are the goals, and then the specific actions as they become available. So we're finalizing this vision statement with those three core values. And the existing trends informs the master plan. So this existing trends report is available on the imagine.nashua.nh.gov, and it's going to show us a little bit about the change in age structure, rent and purchasing capacity. Something that came up was that based on the average earnings, Not one of the industry sectors in Nashua can afford the city's current median home price of $321,000. I don't think that's a surprise, but to go back and say that not one can is pretty shocking. And that the median rent is $1,287. 50% of current housing stock is single family housing. We have a huge opportunity to expand multifamily mixed use development that's more affordable for the changing demographics of our city. Mobility and transit, you know, we're looking for ways to really improve non-vehicle components such as bike lanes, sidewalks, improvement around the city schools as well. One thing I didn't know that is now in my 2021 to-do list is Nashua has 50 public parks. So that's all 50 on the list, need to go to each one. 1,292 acres and 48 miles of trails. So, you know, hopefully my dog will agree to walk all 48 miles, but that's also on the list this year. So I would challenge you to put that on yours. And then moving into, again, the existing conditions report. I don't know how many of you have seen it. It's absolutely incredible. So you can see that on the website as well and use that maybe in your day-to-day. So how do we move from the vision and goals, a high level, to very specific? Well, one example is if we look at how do we enhance access and better connect Nashua's existing open spaces for citizens of all ages, abilities, and incomes? Well, one simple way is let's improve signage. How do you know you can walk somewhere if there's not a sign telling you what this trail is and that you can walk, right? And also identifying some of those trails that need to be improved for ADA access. Public survey number 2, this is where you come in specifically. The social pinpoint map is really incredible. It allows you to, if you want to zoom all the way into your front doorstep, you can do that and say, you know, this area needs to be improved. But we're looking at these 3 areas: maintain or protect, develop or redevelop, or improve. So let's say, for example, I could say, what's great about this location? Well, I have one of those 50 public parks across the street from my house, and I love it. Or should it be, you know, redeveloped? Could it be used for something else? What's missing? What could be better about it? So you can not only make your own comment anonymously. It does ask for your name, but that's just to email you back and say, hey, you know, thank you, we got your comment. But it is anonymous. So if you do have maybe what you consider to be a maybe a more questionable statement that you don't necessarily want your name on, that's okay, you can do that. And you can also like and dislike other people. So this is how we're gathering quick and easy feedback and seeing where the consensus is. So I would love to invite each of you. I have a personal goal of 20. There's 30 something people on this call. If you each do it, I'll hit my goal. And invite others. We want to know from everyone. So some of the feedback on those draft goals, again, the 6 planning topics: land use and development, housing, mobility and transit, economic growth, open space, natural resources, and arts and culture. You can find the goals on the website, imagine.nashuanh.gov. And coming up, not only do we want that feedback, but as we're moving along in the planning process and finalizing the vision and goals, we have 2 upcoming meetings that I would love for you to save the date on. March 2nd is a topic area conversation. This will be about the corridors. So we're talking about Daniel Webster College. What do you envision for that? You have some time between now and then to really think about it. Also, what does the future of Amherst Street look like, or DW Highway? What needs to be improved, maintained, or protected, right? And then focus groups and local events like this. Please invite us to come and speak to your religious affiliation, to any groups, organizations that you're a part of, to your work team, whatever that may be. And that is all I have for you today.
Thank you, Amber. That was an excellent presentation. We really appreciate the work you're doing also as a volunteer in our community to help move this forward as a project. So thank you. I didn't see any questions or comments put in the chat. Sarah Marchant put the link to Imagine Nashua in the chat for people to copy and take a look at. And as if anybody does have a question that comes up after the fact, that would be fine. Go ahead and ask that. We'll try and loop back to that later in the meeting. Liz, would you like to introduce our next presenter?
Sure. Our next presenter is also one of our core partners for the Community Connections Forum. It's Jay Minkara from Nashua Regional Planning Commission. He's going to talk about infrastructure with an emphasis on transportation.
I do need to unmute myself, I guess, and get my camera on. Hopefully everybody can hear me. So thank you, Liz, and for Amber and Dan. I think we got a theme going. I am also right down the street on Mount Pleasant Street. So I think we're all kind of clustered in the same area. So I won't be, I don't think, as nearly as interesting as the last two speakers, and I don't think the presentation will be quite as compelling either, but it does touch on a lot of the issues. So just very briefly, for those who don't know, the National Regional Planning Commission, or NRPC for short, actually touches on pretty much everything that we've heard of already. We are involved actually in energy aggregation on behalf of our communities. We do a great deal of work in the master planning realm. But today I'm going to really focus on transportation and transportation related issues. So just a few overarching comments. So we're the National Regional Planning Commission, but we are also what's known under federal law as a Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. What that means is that we have a formal role in planning for how federal transportation dollars are going to be spent in our region. And so, and that manifests itself really in a variety of ways, including providing, assistance and support for public transit, the Nashua Transit System, working with our community transportation providers, such as the Hegan Valley Transportation Collaborative, and as I mentioned, a formal role in that federal approval process. So I'm going to touch on some of those issues, but just a few overall comments. So of course, one of the areas that we're very actively involved in, and I know a lot of people are interested in, is the extension of commuter rail to New Hampshire, to Nashua, to Manchester, perhaps ultimately Concord, I should say, as well as the airport. That's the Capital Corridor project. Certainly for the folks, particularly in Nashua, we hear a lot of comments about that. That's certainly something that's coming up through the master plan. And basically what that Capital Corridor project is expanding commuter rail, the existing commuter rail line that ends in Lowell, up into South Nashua with a station somewhere in South Nashua, a station in the downtown Nashua area, an airport station, and a station in downtown Manchester. So that is moving forward. I have the privilege of serving on Nashua's Rail Committee. We're also involved with that project as a regional level. So just for those who don't know, most recently, just in January, the New Hampshire Department of Transportation entered into a contract with a firm called AECOM, and they're going to begin what is called the project development phase. That's a critical phase in this project. It's a $5 million contract, give or take. And essentially during this process, what they're going to be doing is the basic environmental studies that are necessary to move that project forward. They're going to be doing a fiscal analysis, they're going to be doing an economic impact analysis, and ultimately figuring out, is it feasible? How can we pay for it? Or I should say, what is it going to cost and how can we pay for it? They're also going to be doing preliminary engineering. So for a lot of us who have been working with this for a long time, that really is a critical milestone. You have to get through the project development phase before you can apply for federal funding to implement the project itself, assuming that it turns out to be feasible. So critical that this is happening. It's going to be about a 2-year process, so great to see it moving forward. We've got a couple of other processes that are happening right now that are significant. For those who don't know, every 2 years, the state adds 2 more years to its 10-year transportation improvement program. Why that matters is the state of New Hampshire cannot spend money on transportation improvements unless it's in that adopted plan. Our role in that is basically soliciting applications from our communities. And I should say we have 13 communities in the Nashua region. And we have what's called sub-allocation authority. So we have just over $6 million that we can spend I should say, we're not spending it, but we have an allocation of about $6 million. I have to say, this year, we really struggled in reaching that $6 million. It's quite something to think that we didn't have enough interest in pursuing projects through that transportation plan, to really hit our allocation. So that's quite striking. We have another process, though, that is moving forward called the Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP. And that funds primarily bicycle and pedestrian improvements, sidewalks, trails, et cetera, bike lanes. Under that program, there is about $5.2 million available statewide. Our region alone has submitted $4,680,000 worth of projects. So on the one hand, we have traditional highway projects that there is really a lack of interest in, I have to say, again, to my surprise. But when we come to the bicycle and pedestrian improvements, the demand is far exceeding the funding that's available. So these are critical conversations, I think, for us to be having on a policy level. Right now, there is a lot of activity for those who've been following on the transportation front. The House just released a proposed, I should say, the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure has just proposed a very aggressive transportation improvement package. I think almost certainly we're going to see a significant bill move forward this year. We also have, most of our transportation funding comes through something that's called the FAST Act. And of course, FAST is an acronym. That expired last September. So right now we're on a one-year extension. There's a lot of activity happening around the FAST Act as well, creating a new FAST Act, another at least hopefully 5-year funding program. So why I'm saying this is because now is really a critical time to make your voice heard. If there are transportation needs that you're seeing in your communities, whether those are alternative transportation projects such as bicycle, pedestrian, whether that's transit related, that could be community transportation services, services for the elderly, it could be Nashua transit related services, commuter rail, or highway improvements. Now really is the time to be reaching out to your elected leaders, your people like me who aren't elected, as your congressional representatives. They really do want to hear from you. And we want to hear from you as well. So I'm going to leave my email in chat so that if you do want to reach out to me, I would encourage you to do that. If you have any thoughts, comments, I'd also really encourage you to get involved in our process. And it does kind of pick up on some of the comments that we had earlier about getting involved in something like Imagine Nashua. We do have a public process. When we go through our formal transportation planning role, all of that's public. And I will say we struggle to get people interested. We struggle to get people to come to meetings. It's easier now than ever because we have Zoom. So putting all of that aside, what I would like to do, briefly, and it won't take too much more of people's time, is I just wanted to show you 3 resources that we do have available on our website with a significant amount of transportation-related information. So I talk, about our role in transportation, some of the other things that we do. A lot of what we do is gather data, and we have a very robust GIS group that does a great deal of mapping for us and data compilation. Most all of that is available on our website. And so I thought I would just make you aware of a few resources that are out there, which hopefully could have some value to you if I can share my screen. All right, I'm probably going to start sharing my screen now. Can everybody see my screen? So this is a section of our website on traffic counting. Traffic counting is one of the things that we do on a regular basis. It's one of our most ambitious data collection projects. We have over 1,000 traffic count locations in our region. And by the way, I should have mentioned what our region is, but you can kind of see the outline map here. We go everywhere from towns like Lyndeborough, Wilton, and Mason out west, all the way to Pelham on the east. So all of these purple dots you see are traffic count locations. We don't count every location every year, but if you are driving around and you go across one of those rubber tubes across the road, that's probably our rubber tube. And so this is a map accessible on our website. As you can see here, you can see the total volume. So obviously the larger the traffic count, the bigger the blob that you see. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in, give you a couple of examples. You can just keep zooming in. We do see a lot of interest in this site, probably primarily from either real estate agents and brokers who want to be able to say how many vehicles pass this particular location, or not surprisingly, anybody involved in development where you've got to do a traffic study for a new project. So yeah, just to give you an idea, you go on the map, click on the link. As you can see here, here we are on Amherst Street, so no surprise, very high level of traffic, almost 30,000 weekly vehicles. You can go down to see what are the peak hours, what's the AM peak, what's the PM peak, when was this count taken? So again, we don't take every location every year, but as you can see here, that was in August of 19. And you can also click here to say, show me related records. You can go back, and I'm not going to go through all this, and you can also see historic counts. So what happened at other counts at another point. Every one of these dots is the same, so I'm not going to belabor what you can do here, but this really is a useful tool. A lot of people don't know that this exists. So hopefully, worthwhile, come to the site. I say traffic counts. We also do a fair amount of bicycle and pedestrian counts. So if you use the Heritage Rail Trail in Nashua, that kind of runs right through the heart of the city, we're out there counting very regularly every year. We count both pedestrians and bicycles. On the rail trail that goes to air, we've got a permanent counter. And we count in a number of our communities on some of the more significant trails. We are looking to build that more. So if anybody's interested in counts on any trails out there, let us know. Very soon, you're going to see a similar map for bicycle and pedestrian counts. We're still in the process of building that and getting that data together, but hopefully that's something that is going to be available fairly soon. I definitely do enjoy data. So moving on to, this is one of our newest additions. This is called our Nashua Project Viewer. So I didn't really reel off a lot of the projects. I mentioned the 10-year plan. But if you are interested in what is currently planned in our region, this is a site, again, available on our website. So I just scrolled down to 10-year plan, which is something that I mentioned. What is currently funded in the 10-year plan? So this is what's funded in the 10-year plan. And if you want to know information about the project, so here, these are improvements that are planned for 101. Hopefully when I click on 101, you're going to see just a brief summary. These are traffic and safety improvements. They are proposed for that whole corridor from Wilton to Bedford. As you can see, obviously, the route, the distance, category, this might not matter to you, but this is considered a safety project. Starting year is 2022, and this is the budget amount. You can keep on going if you want more information, nice little picture. But it just gives you a really nice little snapshot if you want to know what's happening and what's planned. Probably another significant one. I think my computer is being slow. Let's see. It's being slow. I want to click on another project. Let me see if it'll let me click on one down here. There we go. Really, really small one. This is just one in the town of Brookline. Again, this is a bicycle and pedestrian improvement. Once again, you can see the cost, you can see the amount. Maybe it'll let me click on the turnpike. This is the biggest one that we currently have in our region. And for those who don't know, we have major improvements that are proposed on the section of the turnpike. If you're driving north towards Concord and you get past exit, well, I was gonna say, you get past exit 8, getting into Merrimack, you know that the road narrows. You are going down to 2 lanes in each direction from 3. That's a real pinch point. So that is going to be widened to 3 lanes in each direction. They're also going to be improving the tolls. So not surprisingly, this is a significant project. It says it begins in 2021. That's engineering. Engineering always comes first. This is a $155 million project. So massive project for our region. So once again, if you want to know what's out there, what's planned, if it's to be in the 10-year plan, I should add, it has to be funded. So it's not a wish list. This means this is a project that has been approved by governor and council. It's been approved by the legislature. The funding has been identified, so significantly. Finally, just moving on to hopefully one more. So this is another one that I wanted to share, and this is not exactly, or I should say, this is not solely transportation. This is a resource that we had on our website for a few years, and it's one that we're really hoping to rebuild. And so I wanted to end on this, not rebuild, build up. And we've seen a lot more interest in this, not surprisingly, you know, with the pandemic. And so essentially this is a resource for finding out about active recreation in the Nashua region. As you can see, we have a variety of categories here. Some of these are really illustrative. This is not every park. Playgrounds is probably the most robust that we have now. So just as an example, I'll go to, I'm not even, hopefully this is a good example. So I've clicked on this particular playground. So you can see up here, kind of similar to a lot of things that we do, you've got the name of the playground, some basic information, a photograph, where it is in Milford, and then, you know, again, just as much basic information as we could pull together. And then if you want more information, you can click and there you are. Now you're at the town of Milford's recreation department. So getting out of this, going back here, trails and open space. This is another one that's been really, really popular. Again, kind of looking down here, you see the thumbnails of all of the different ones that we have. So you can search them this way, or again, of course, you can click on the map. And here again is your basic information, a picture, bit of a description of it. And then of course, as before, you can click further if you want to get more information. So we really see this as a resource, as I said, that we want to build. So that's why I'm ending on this, because it is a call for assistance. We at the staff level know a lot, and we're going out and we're gathering information, but we really want to crowdsource this. So what we're hoping is go visit the site. What are we missing? If you know of a park or you know a playground, a great trail system, you're like, hey, this isn't on your map, let us know. Shoot us a note. Tell us what it is. And it could be anything. This is unique amenities. So this is just a category for things like, oh, there's a pickleball court in Hudson. We put some things on here like winter recreation. Tell us what your favorite sledding hill is. You know, let us know. We'll put it on. You know, so long as it's publicly accessible, I should say, we'll put it on the map. So this is not somebody's backyard. We're also looking for pictures. So if you have a site and you actually happen to have a picture and you don't mind sharing that, we're happy to credit you. We have, as you can see, other folks are credited on the site. So hoping to crowdsource this as much as we can and truly build this as a great resource for all of our communities. So that ends my spiel, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jay. That was really fantastic. And I'm hoping you can put the main link to the website in the chat and your contact information in the chat. I don't see any questions. They do see a comment from Kathleen. It'd be nice to include recreation sites and activities pertaining to seniors. And any comment on that before we move on?
That's actually a great comment. Thank you for that. I think that, you know, more and more, we need to be sensitive to making sure that we're planning for the needs of people of all ages and all abilities. So thank you. That is a great comment.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Jay, for the great presentation. If you wouldn't mind turning off the screen sharing, I'd appreciate that. I will give Jay also a big shout out. Jay's been part of the planning committee for our United Way Blizzard Blast event that we just wrapped up. And you can imagine when we decided to make maps of the courses, who did I reach out to? Of course, our resident map expert. So I guess the thing is, be careful what you get famous for, because you get stuck doing that kind of work. But great job. Liz, if you could introduce our final speakers, I'd really appreciate that.
Sure. Just before we do that, Janet Langdell posted a question in the chat for Jay. And she was asking about the 10-year plan, if that had something related to the pandemic, or if it's been like a trend, or.
Make sure I'm not on mute. So this is the first time we've seen this. Historically, we've had more projects than we were able to fund. So the pandemic, I think, could play into it. I think there's also been a couple of other things that have played into it. One is that if you propose a project now, you're proposing projects for 2032. And for a lot of people, I think that horizon is just so far out that it's a barrier. So I think that's one of the reasons that we're seeing. And even in what we had for the 10-year plan, you know, a few of those were actually bicycle and pedestrian projects also. And what some people have done is, I'm getting into the weeds, but they've double dipped. They've proposed a transportation alternatives project, and they've proposed it in the 10-year plan as a hedge. So it's hard to say exactly what's contributing to it, but I think it's both perhaps the pandemic, but it's also, and you know, maybe that when we say the pandemic, it's maybe a challenge with outreach, but also a challenge in that people just aren't seeing the levels of traffic that they were. So that could mean just less interest, less on people's minds.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I also posted a question. This comes up a lot in the circles that I'm in the community around transportation gaps for people in the workforce who don't have cars, and it's sometimes a barrier for accepting a job, or the time it takes to get to work using the current schedule of public transit, you know, adds like 3 hours to the day for a like 10-minute drive. So I just wondered, like, in the circles of transportation experts, do they think about those things, or how do we connect the folks who need to rely on transportation to access work, to make sure that both sides hear the needs and share the stories?
We think about it all the time. You know, I mean, it's obviously, it's a huge issue. It's been, not surprisingly, an even bigger issue with the pandemic, because there's been significant impact to our community transportation providers and to Nashua Transit. For anybody who follows Nashua Transit, you know, service was significantly curtailed. Now that's beginning to build back up again. And, but it's been a huge challenge, and I think everybody's aware of it. The real issue is, you know, ultimately the real barrier is funding. And again, I'm getting into the weeds, but the amount of funding that has been available, first of all, for Nashua, after the last census, dropped dramatically. And so we have a huge funding limitation. We have, you know, steady or increasing demand. And our ability to meet that demand is just really, really constrained. And beyond the city of Nashua, outside of a pilot program, it's been very, very difficult for the Nashua Transit to operate at all. Nashua Transit really can't operate outside of the boundaries of the city of Nashua, outside some particular circumstances, which again I could get into. So that's made it really limiting. A lot of the paratransit services that do exist are also really limited, and they typically don't take you to employment. That's typically not a purpose of our community transportation providers. So we know that this is an issue. We know it's a challenge, and there are some really creative, smart people thinking about, you know, how can we change this? And we did do a study last year at looking particularly at expanding transit out to Milford, Merrimack, and Hudson, where there are significant employment centers. And, you know, of those, you know, Milford is the most promising, but we still have this huge funding gap that we have not figured out quite yet how to cross. But there are a lot of smart people trying.
Great, thank you. So next, and there wouldn't be a community conversation these days without a touch on the pandemic. So Patty Crooker and Bobby Bagley from Public Health are gonna give us an update on what's happening with the vaccine and how that's gonna roll out in our community. So I think Patty's here, so she's gonna start. Thank you, Patty.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. So yes, pandemic vaccinations are underway. It's crazy time here, so I'm glad to be able to sit down with all you folks and provide you a little bit of an update. So let me share, oh, can I share my screen? When you get a second.
Yes, yep, you can do it now.
Okay, thank you. That, of course, is the state's COVID website, which I constantly have up. So let me go to my toolbars in the way. Everything is in the way. Here we are. So again, my name is Patty Crooker. I'm the Public Health Network Services Coordinator for Greater Nashua. Right now, I'm the lead on the COVID vaccination clinic and response within our region. So I'll let you know where we are at with doing vaccinations and what we anticipate being our next steps as we move forward. So right now we're in what is called phase 1B of vaccination. And so 1A, as you remember, was for healthcare providers in hospitals or facilities that were at high risk, and then they moved down through some different risk categories. And then also for first responders, which included not only traditional first responders such as fire, police, and EMS, as well as public health. So all of these things had to be, all of these groups had to be tiered because of the small amounts of vaccine that were coming into the state on a weekly basis. So we were able to start vaccinating our first responders on December 29th. They also opened up a fixed testing site on December 29th that is located at Nashua High School South. Those clinics are up taking appointments for folks that register through the VAM system, the Vaccine Administration Management System, which is a CDC system that not only people register and schedule their first appointment, but schedule their second appointment too, and all that information is recorded. So it's not connected to a particular healthcare system's electronic medical record. So a couple weeks ago, we moved into phase 1B, which includes these lists, these categories of folks that we see here. And this is really where our public health network started to pick up the ball, and we started holding clinics, and we've been collecting folks' names and preparing for this for a considerable amount of time, and we've been able to ramp up over the past couple of weeks. So the first clinics we held were with Hudson Fire. We did Hudson Fire and Hudson PD in a series of 4 clinics. They were smaller clinics. We got some kinks worked out with the system, and we're able to get through those and then sort of been out the door running. So the clinics that we are scheduling right now tend to be mostly within the population. So I'll go through these each individually. Residents and staff of residential facilities for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, which we're doing this week. Corrections officers and staff working in correctional facilities. We don't have any of these within our Greater Nashua region. So we want to make sure that we're covering as best we can our first responders and such at the same time, because we're also doing those first responders and healthcare folks that were not already vaccinated. One of the most important pieces of the vaccine strategy is that New Hampshire is allocating 10% of vaccine for disproportionately affected populations that have been identified through what's called the COVID-19 Community Vulnerability Index. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. So 65 years and older, this group is identified because they're at increased risk for severe COVID-19 as well as death compared to those who are younger. Simple reasoning behind how they came up with these different groups was based upon the risk of the individual categories. So even though we say 65, we also have to look at tiering those folks because we may not be able to vaccinate everybody that's over 65 at one time, correct? So we tier those for people that have medical comorbidities, which we'll go through. There are a certain list of identified illnesses. People that are 75 years and older may be vaccinated before 65 to 74-year-olds. Those that are in congregate settings or residential facilities be vaccinated before those are in a private home, and so on and so forth, because we want to make sure that we're getting the most at-risk people vaccinated first. Now, the strategy that we've been using to do this is to work with residential facilities that have either individual units or units with some shared spaces that are for people that are 65 plus. So senior living, independent living, things of that nature. So we've held clinics at a number of those facilities already. We've been able to vaccinate their residents as well as some of their staff that qualify under these eligibility guidelines, and also some of their board members if they qualify as well, and we have additional vaccine. So that's sort of our track going through for this population. For example, I've spoken to this week somebody with, what is it called? The property management company that owns Coliseum Ave. They own a place on Will Street, a place in Hudson, or in Hollis, not Hollis, in Milford as well. So they have Coliseum Ave being the biggest, is 141 apartments. So us being able to go there and provide a clinic for them gets a huge number of folks off. It's about 160 individuals. So that's one of 7 sites that they operate that we're going to be going around to vaccinate. So we're able to get big chunks of folks vaccinated at a time, which is really ideal. We also are looking at medically vulnerable populations. Now you'll note that I did not list these as one of the populations that we are targeting for the Public Health Network to vaccinate. And that is because in order for somebody to qualify as medically vulnerable under this category, they have to have 2 or more of the specified underlying medical conditions that were put out by the CDC. So the list here is those conditions. So you can see cancer, chronic kidney disease, COPD, pregnancy. They have to have 2 or more of those. And there's a whole nother 2 pages that goes into specifics about individual kinds of cancers, individual kinds of heart conditions, individual kinds of immunocompromising diseases or conditions. And to verify that, their doctor has to provide what's called an attestation. So they have to sign something with this person's name on it saying that they qualify for this eligibility criteria. And in order to do that, they send that information up to the state of New Hampshire, and it is put into their VAM system. And since we don't have access to their medical attestation, we typically are not holding clinics for this population because they have to go to the fixed site. That being said, there is some opportunities for expansion and other vaccination access or vaccine access that will be coming down the pike in the coming days, weeks. I know the governor had mentioned the federal partnership with Walgreens and how the Walgreens that are participating in New Hampshire are going to be getting appointments, is that folks at the state level are working to pull people's appointments out of VAMs that might be further along or maybe at higher risk, and have them set them up with appointments at Walgreens instead. So it won't be in a walk-in type of situation. You can't just go in and get a vaccination. It's all being directed from the state, and more information will come shortly. We just sort of got the basic information at a call today at noon. So times change minute by minute, sometimes hour by hour. Never day by day, because it's faster than that. We are doing staff and residents of residential facilities for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we have clinic planned for gateways for their staff. Also working with them to figure out how we're going to get their folks that are in their group homes and so forth, their other clients vaccinated. Also, Plus Company had a clinic today. So that's a big chunk of folks. Those are 2 big clinics that are going to be completed as of this week. It's important that I mention on top of the fact that we're doing these clinics is that when we hold a clinic, we automatically schedule one for 4 weeks later so that people are getting their first and second dose of vaccine and they don't have to worry about where they're going to go for that second dose. So that's one of the pieces that we make sure to schedule. So again, because of their risk levels then and the possibility that they have a higher rate of mortality and a higher rate of severe illness, this population is pulled off and was bumped up to phase 1B. Again, you'll see when there's a limited vaccine that the state offers us guidance as far as how to tier folks even within that group. People that are in a residential setting versus a non-residential setting, people that are older before younger. One other piece that ties into this that we get asked a lot is how are we going to vaccinate those folks within our communities that are homebound? Some of them are homebound in the senior living facilities, and we're vaccinating them there. We've gone to individual apartments to vaccinate folks if they can't even get down to the community room. So we're making some headway in that. The state was just speaking yesterday, and they've been trying to figure out the best routes to go to vaccinate folks that are homebound. And it appears the decision is sort of going to go the way of some other categories that we've been talking about and to work through the public health networks to coordinate something to get that done. And the discussions are going to roll out. In the meantime, we are keeping some information on folks that we are notified of being homebound that need vaccination that are in their own homes, their private homes. We are looking at potentially partnering with our home health care providers to be able to do some of that vaccination. I want to talk to folks at Meals on Wheels to see how we can identify folks and a method to be able to vaccinate those populations. So we're trying to come up with different solutions, and you'll see us offering a varying amount of or varying types of clinics. Right now we offer mobile clinics where we go and our clinical staff do the vaccinations. We have closed clinics, closed pods. Back in the old days, they were called closed pods up until like last week. But right now we're just doing so many of them and they've modified a bit from how we originally planned. But those are for facilities that have clinical staffing. So we did staff for Harbor Care and staff for the mental health center. Those folks were able to come in. We came in and we helped train them on how to vaccinate. They weren't familiar with it, observed folks, do all of the ordering, administrative stuff, things like that. But they supply staffing that can help take some of that load off and we don't have to provide all of the nurses or vaccinators. And then community clinics, which we will be holding our first one on Friday. Those also have to be scheduled appointments. There is some availability that we would be able to do on-site registration, but for the most part, we're doing scheduled appointments and we're trying to work out the best way to do that. And that we will get to next after this. So healthcare workers and first responders, again, we're still working to do those second clinics with the first responders from Hudson. They have their second clinic starting next week, their second dose. We also are working with first responders throughout the region and healthcare workers to make sure that they are able to get their first and second doses of vaccine if they haven't already. One of the ways that we do that is by running a standby list that is for extra doses of vaccine that become available on a daily basis at the fixed vaccination site at Nashua High School South. So we typically get a call. They call me in the afternoons. Now that the fixed testing site or fixed vaccination sites, now I'm going to do that for the rest of the time that we're talking today. The fixed vaccination sites are open 7 days a week, 12-hour days, as opposed to 5 days a week, 8-hour days. I get calls later. So last night I was at 6:30. Usually it's that they have 1 or 2 doses, sometimes 2 to 5 doses. Last night I was called and I was on a quick meeting with some folks just doing some strategic planning around some clinics for the clinics today and tomorrow. And they had 10 to 15 extra doses of vaccine, which is typically unheard of. So way within, thankfully I was on the phone with a group of folks. So we all took some calls and we were able to send 8 people over. And once I sent those 8, he called and he said, "Oh, thank you very much." He's like, that's awesome, but we're getting some people down from this that the other sites are sending to us now, so we're all set. So we maintain this running standby list, and not only for the fixed sites, but also clinics that we run. If we are able to have extra doses at the end, we don't want to waste any vaccine. Everyone says it's liquid gold. You know, they want to make sure that we don't waste any vaccine to the best of our ability. And so far, knock on wood, we have not wasted a dose for the public health network side of things. And so we'll call people from our clinics as well if we have extra doses remaining. So the vaccine that we get is Moderna. It comes in one vial that has 10 doses in it. Majority of the vaccine vials actually have an 11th dose in it. So there's some variability when we order doses. If we have 35 people to vaccinate, we have to order 40 doses, and then we have to fill in folks to get those remaining 5 doses, as well as any 11th dose that we were able to pull out. We still do that using the eligibility criteria though. So that's why we have the list of folks and different contacts at different organizations that can vet individuals that they want to have signed up on that list. So then there's a component called the equity allocation. And this is what I referred to on the first slide at the bottom where it said 10% is going to be held. And what had been developed is called a COVID-19 Community Vulnerability Index. And I will show you a screenshot from it. And the state is following some national guidelines or recommendations that would allocate 10% of our available state vaccine supply. So that's the whole lump sum that comes into the state, not just that goes to the networks versus goes to the fixed sites. And we're going to focus on areas, geographic areas that are highly vulnerable to COVID-19, as well as communities that are highly vulnerable to COVID-19. So we use the Community Vulnerability Index to be able to identify those areas, and we are distributing those vaccines through our mobile clinics. So the networks are taking the lead in doing those equity allocations. So we are trying to make sure that we are identifying and providing access to vaccine in some of our highly vulnerable areas. It also includes initially to provide vaccine for New Hampshire's racial and ethnic minority communities, and then include other vulnerable populations such as geographically isolated, or like I said, those that living in economic hardship. And we are holding clinics specifically in areas and census tracts that were identified as the most risk or highest risk. So again, this has a breakdown of how we're going to do this, and then I'll explain the groups that we mentioned. So again, within this racial and ethnic minority communities, we want to be tiering folks, prioritizing folks that are 65 or older, the ones that have additional medical comorbidities before those without. If people live in multi-generational households or congregate living situations, if people have barriers to accessing healthcare, transportation, or other services that they would need, if they are people that have a lot of public contact and they have not been diagnosed, a confirmed diagnosis of COVID-19 within the 90 days previous to the vaccination time. We sometimes ask them to hold off a few weeks, and then we can vaccinate those that haven't, because they may have some antibodies already built up in their system. So this includes folks that are homeless or housing insecure, folks that have economic hardships, maybe educational hardships, and we're trying our best to work with partners to identify those and to make sure that we are providing those services in a way that best meets the intent to help out these populations. So with that being said, this screen is just vulnerability. So you're talking about the COVID Community Vulnerability Index, it's how well a community handles the repercussions from COVID-19. And vulnerability really matters. This is the slide that gets updated, and it's from the website that is actually at the bottom here. It's the precisionforcovid.org, and they operate this site with the CCVI. So it provides you with some of the updates of data. So 64% of people in vulnerable communities, or people in vulnerable communities, were 64% more likely to have been diagnosed with COVID, 93% more likely to have died from COVID, 21% less likely to have been tested, and 297% more likely to be in a geographical COVID hotspot. Now that's in the past week. If you look on the right-hand side, since the beginning of the pandemic, they also maintained those statistics. So it's a good illustration of what the data says in regards to this topic. So in the United States today, our people in vulnerable communities are 2 times as likely to have died. And some of our most vulnerable communities are burdened because they don't have access to healthcare, affordable housing, transportation, childcare, and safe and secure employment. Some information about the COVID Community Vulnerability Index, which I provided the website for, but it wants to really look at the health, economic, and social consequences of COVID, as well as the medical consequences. And it looks at social vulnerability, which we do as well. If we all recall, our community health assessments and community health improvement plans have moved to being based on an overarching theme that has to do with social vulnerability and socioeconomic or social vulnerability index indicators. So we want to make sure that this is another piece of information that really lets us know and provides us with data that we're moving in the right direction with sort of that outlook and that lens.
Patty, do you think we can move to questions from people in the next like 3 minutes or so?
Yes, absolutely.
Great.
This is actually, there's just 2 more quick pieces. So I just wanted to show you, this is the slide that shows the darker the area, the increased vulnerability of those geographic locations. Majority of them are in Nashua, and our 2 prioritized census tracts include the French Hill neighborhoods over to Little Florida and the Tree Streets. And then I have in here also the vaccine.nh.gov website if folks are interested in finding out if they are able to register for vaccine and how to go through that process. And that's it.
Any questions for Patty? And I think I saw Bobby Bagley join the call. Bobby, did you want to make some high-level comments before we move on?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having us and for taking the time to address this really critical issue around our vaccine rollout and making sure that we work together as partners to be as effective and as efficient as we can with getting vaccine into arms. I would just, since there's not that much time, just wanted to just reiterate, with our rollout of the equity allocation, because we know from the data that we've seen, our populations that are representative of our Black, Indigenous, and people of color, which we're terming BIPOC populations, there is an intentionality about getting these population groups vaccinated. And we have different criteria, and Patty explained the tiering out because of the amount of vaccine that is available. With that population group, they do not have to fall under or be 65 or older or fall into certain category limitations, because the intentionality is about making sure that we can get vaccine into that population of those who want to be vaccinated. Because our data and our experience with our disease investigation has shown these population groups have higher disease, higher hospitalization, and higher deaths, regardless of if they are 65 or older or have some of these other underlying factors. And so because of that disproportionality, information that came out through the governor's health and equity report, and what the state wants to do is make sure that we can prioritize these population groups. And so we're asking our partners to work with us to help identify individuals that want to get vaccinated, because again, it's not mandated, but that want to get vaccinated, to encourage them to reach out to our health department at some of the public vaccination sites so that we can make that happen. And then folks that fall into the, category, regardless of their race, or ethnicity, if they fall under 1B, they can be vaccinated, at, the fixed sites. And so our community outreach and what we're asking you to partner with us on is identifying those who may not be able to get to, that fixed site, but that also, what the, the emphasis on making sure that they don't get lost, right? And so we want to have some intentionality about that. We have some community health workers that will be reaching out to you as well to get connected to those populations. Patty mentioned we have information in different languages. And so we have our community health workers right now give us the benefit of up to 9 different languages that we haven't had in the past. So we have information that's been translated into those first languages for folks. And so you can call our health department and people can speak to them in their first language as well. So that was only that wasn't even 3 minutes.
That was awesome, Bobby. Thank you. There's a question from Janet Langdell in the chat. She's asking, in addition to the senior housing that's mentioned for closed clinics, is there anything planned for Milford by way of mobile clinics?
We would love to do something in Milford, and we would love to do something specifically in that targeted area where we have that high vulnerability. I would be happy for any organization to reach out that wants to plan that for me. We're going to be asking our partners that are the health officers and emergency managers in those towns to also step forward and help us do some of that planning. But we're willing to partner with organizations as well individually. I know there's one being planned in Merrimack because they had reached out about doing one at their senior housing. So there are different populations that we can do, all of the ones I mentioned. So if your organization also serves if your staff or your clients, residents, patients are part of those populations, we can talk about how we can best partner to be able to make sure we are keeping vaccine available for them or making it available for them.
And the only other thing I would add to that is remembering that we are regional. So we do a lot of core work in Nashua, but we are regional. And so our expectation is that we will be able to get to, our 12 surrounding towns based on our collaboration with our partners to make those things happen. So please do make us aware of those needs.
And we're hoping the weather sides with us, and maybe we get a little bit of a warm stretch coming up. Bobby and I have sort of a reach taking different sides. I said it's going to be at least a week in March that'll be warm enough to do it outside. Otherwise, we need to find indoor facilities. So,
yeah, and this is New Hampshire.
Thank you, Bobby and Patty, for your information, your presentations. Before we go any further, I want to make sure that both of you put your contact information in the chat. It's one of the purposes for this forum is to provide also what I refer to, since I'm an old person, as the community Rolodex. And this is a way for us to build resilience as a community, is to just basically know who is who and who's doing what and who has some information. So the final piece of today's forum, as it always is a very quick round robin of introductions. Before we get to that, I want to thank today's speakers, Dan Weeks from Revision Energy, Amber Logue representing Imagine Nashua, Jay Minkara from the Greater Nashua Regional Planning Commission, and more importantly, the Blizzard Blast Planning Team, Patty Crooker and Bobby Bagley from our Public Health Department. Thank you all so much for your presentations today. We really appreciate the time and effort that you've put in to helping to inform us as a community. I'm going to ask people basically just to go around and give a very quick introduction. When I mean say very quick, I mean like 10 seconds. That's it. Who are you? What organization, if any, do you represent? And please put your name and contact information in the chat shortly thereafter. And we're going to go through people who we've already seen. I'm just going to call it as I see it on my screen. We'll start with Amber Logue from Imagine Nashua, and then I'm going to go to Liz Fitzgerald, Lee Ellison, and Kate Lusko in that order, please.
Awesome. Thank you. Amber Logue, for those of you that joined a little late, I am the chair of Imagine Nashua, which is the city's master plan committee. My info is already in the chat box, and also the chair of the Animal and Dog Park Advisory Committee for the city of Nashua.
Thank you, Amber. Liz? You're on mute, Liz.
Oh, I used up my 30 seconds on mute.
I said 10 seconds.
I'm Liz Fitzgerald. I work with Mike at United Way on community impact issues. Appreciate you here. I'm posting in the chat a Slack that the city has been using around COVID. It's a great place to connect with other people on issues. So you're all invited to join, and all you have to do is go there and say you want to be part. It'll have a bunch of channels you can connect to
Thank you,
around
Liz.
topics.
That's great. Lee and then Kate.
Lee Allison. I'm a Nashua retiree. I volunteer with the United Way with the Humane Society for Greater Nashua, and I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Nashua West.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kate Lesko. I'm the president and CEO of the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Kate. Then we're going to go Dan, then Kathy, then Betsy, then Janet, then Greg White.
Hello, everyone. Dan Weeks with Revision Energy and various local boards, including St. Joseph's Hospital.
Kathy?
Hi, I'm a volunteer with United Way, and we're trying to bring the Wash and Read program to area laundromats.
I'm Betsy Hood. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships for Southern New Hampshire Health and also a member of Nashua West Rotary.
Janet?
Janet Langdale. I work with the Sohegan Valley Transportation Collaborative, Community Transportation, and I'm a member of the Milford Rotary Club.
Greg? Oh, Greg, you're muted. Greg, I think there's something wrong with your microphone. We can't hear you speaking.
How about now?
Perfect.
Yes.
Sorry. I'm Greg White. I'm the CEO of Lamprey Healthcare. We are a federally qualified health center with sites in Nashua, Newmarket, and Raymond. We're very interested, obviously, in some of the conversations today that Patty and Bobby have discussed, particularly with communities that have access problems to healthcare. I'm also on the board of SHARE, which is a food pantry in Milford.
Thank you, Greg. Next up, we're going to do Jay, then Lizzie, then Patty Crooker, Bobby Bagley, and Wendy Hunt.
Jay Mankara, Executive Director of the National Regional Planning Commission, and I'm also on the Community Advisory Board for United Way, among other things.
Lizzie Gonzalez, I'm the Vice President of Student and Community Affairs at Nashua Community College and also the Title IX Coordinator.
Patty, you're muted.
Patty Crooker, Public Health Network Services Coordinator, Nashua Department of Public Health.
Thank you.
Hi, and Bobby Bagley, Director for the Division of Public Health and Community Services. I also serve on the New Hampshire Tribal Foundation Regional Advisory Board for our region, and I am on the state's CHIP program and on the governor's something to do with death and morbidity with overdoses, which sounds gross, but it's good stuff.
Wendy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Hunt, President of the Greater Merrimack-Sohegan Valley Chamber of Commerce, serve on numerous boards, and I did the 10K Blizzard Blast last Thursday with all the obstacle courses, and I can still feel it when I get out of bed and stand up.
Well,
Torture.
Thank you, Wendy. We appreciate that. We're going to go next to Paul Bohr, and then Jane, Kathleen, Tom Christensen, and Justin Monroe.
Hi, I'm Paul Bohr. I'm with Shower Them out of Milford.
I'm Jane Barnes. I'm the chair of the Social Educational Behavior Science Department at Nashua Community College. And we also have an intern working. We're very excited with the United Way this term. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathleen Stewart.
Hi, yes, I'm Kathleen, Program Coordinator for the Senior Companion Program, and we are looking for seniors in the Nashua area to help. We're providing a telephone reassurance program, pen pal program, and also help with essential errands. So I'll give my information in the chat box. Please send referrals our way. We have companions that are willing to help. Thank you.
Tom?
And Tom Christensen, I'm from Amherst, and I'm involved with the folks who are trying to develop the Sohegan Valley Rail Trail, which will connect Wilson into Nashua.
Thank you. Justin Monroe?
Hi, this is Justin Monroe. I'm the Executive Director over at Grow Nashua. And we're currently, anybody that's interested in any of your programs that are interested in growing food this year, feel free to direct them to our website. There's several different ways to participate.
Thank you, Justin. Next up, we're going to have Sarah Caesar, then Kevin, then Joelle Martin, Elise Butterworth, and Donna Marceau. Sarah? Sarah might have stepped away from her desk. Let's go to Kevin.
Hi, my name is Kevin Marion. I'm currently a volunteer on the Resource Development Committee for the United Way.
Joelle?
Hi there. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Joelle Martin, Executive Director for Milford Thrives. Also the facilitator for the Milford Thrives Early Childhood Collaborative. And I'm on the board of the Boys and Girls Club here in Milford, as well as a board member of the Center for Trauma Responsive Program Change.
Thank you, Joelle. Let's go to Elise Butterworth and Donna Marceau.
Hi, I'm Elise Butterworth. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Nashua, and I work with Justin Cates at the Office of Emergency Management.
Thank you. And just a reminder, if you guys could all put your information in the chat, that would be great. We have Donna, and then if she's back at our desk, we have Sarah Caesar, and then Sandra Pratt.
So I'm Donna Marceau. I do employment education at the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter.
Okay, Sandra?
Trying to unmute myself. Sandra Pratt from Gateways Community Services. I have too many other hats, so thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. We appreciate
With Gateways for today.
We appreciate that. Then we have coming down to the end, we have Kristen De La Rosa, and then Paula, and then Angela, then Jen Miller, then Paul Shea. Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen De La Rosa. I'm a community health worker with Lamprey Healthcare in Nashua.
Thank you. Paula?
Hi, I'm Paula Moran. I'm with the United Way. I'm a volunteer. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have Jen Miller.
Hi, I'm Jen Miller with Nashua PAL, the Police Athletic League. I'm the Development Director.
Thank you. Then we had Angela.
Hi, I'm Angela Wesson. I'm the Transit Mobility Manager with the Nashua Transit System.
Very good. Thank you, Angela. And of course, rounding out every exciting program is Paul Shea to take us home.
Hey, Mike. I'm Paul Shea. I'm the Executive Director for Great American Downtown. We have a mission centered around economic and cultural vibrancy in downtown Nashua.
Thank you, Paul. That's fantastic. And I apologize if I missed anybody. Please chime in now. Okay, doesn't look like it. So this is about the end of our program. I'm going to leave the Zoom open for a few minutes. I did want to, before we cut out, call your attention to our next meeting. The next Community Connections Forum is tentatively scheduled for June 10th from 1 to 3 p.m. That's a Thursday. And the theme that we've scheduled is health, safety, and preparedness. If you would like to bring up a specific area that you'd like to see addressed, please contact us at United Way. Liz is your primary contact. Liz, if you could put your email in the chat, that would be great. Before we cut out then for the day, I did want to thank our core partners again, especially the Nashua Regional Planning Commission, the City of Nashua, volunteers active in disaster via the VOAD, Greater Nashua Public Health Department and Community Services, the Chamber of Commerce of Greater Nashua, the Greater Merrimack and Sohegan Valley Chamber of Commerce, the Hudson Chamber of Commerce, Southern New Hampshire Health, St. Joseph's Hospital, and the umbrella organization for Southern New Hampshire Health, Solution Health. So thank you everybody for your time today. We really appreciate it. I will be posting the video for this up on our YouTube channel within an hour or two. And other than that, stay safe and have a fantastic day.